Well, bullying remains a huge problem in South African schools. It is estimated that more than half of South African learners will experience some form of bullying during their school years. A grade 8 learner from Nelson Mandela Bay also knows all too well what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Lunati Khoza, who was bullied barely 6 months in starting high school, has since changed schools, but the incident has left him mentally scarred. Our reporter Kim Daniels has more on this.
And he was full of blood, screaming and shouting that he won't have his finger back again. And I was like, where is the finger? But I was also shocked because he was full of blood.
Harrowing scenes detailing the incident that left her son with 3/4 of a finger. Lunati Khoza lost the tip of his finger when another learner slammed a classroom door closed on it.
My child is still traumatized. That child, the class teacher can tell that child is very quiet. But now I can put this phone now next to him. Instead of asking me, Mommy, why do you put this phone here? He will shout and it will be like, that phone was lying there for some time, and every little thing is irritating him. Lately is totally different from a child he was. And now he's aggressive, and that's not my child. And he told the social worker that he'd rather die or be a dropout than going back to the school where he got hit and bullied.
The symptoms Lunati is showing indicates he suffers from post-traumatic stress. He moved to a new school, but he's still struggling.
Some people become sad, some withdraw, some show lack of motivation to work hard, to achieve, to attain great grades, etc. Their marks might drop, their future plans may be impacted negatively. So there are many things that could result from bullying. The big thing here is to note that if a child has no one to turn to, or any person, then they might become even suicidal, although that only happens in rare instances. Repressed anger, I have learned during my research that bullying often scars people lifelong, emotionally, volitionally, etc.
The Department of Education says it is also dealing with this matter.
We are currently trying by all means to resolve this, despite the fact that we are having challenges of disagreement in certain areas, but we are sure that this will be solved. Look, bullying, we are against bullying, and there's such good programs that are tailor-made for that. Due to those who are able to nip it from the bud and make sure that our learners or the learners' behavior is again rejuvenated such that they become learners and kids who listen and participate.
Lunati is set to undergo further treatment. Kim Daniels, SABC News, Gqeberha.
All right, President Cyril Ramaphosa there with those paying tribute to the late Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela in Soweto today. Of course, would have been her 86th birthday. Let's go back to our story on bullying. Of course, a harrowing story there. Let's get more on this, and we look at the rights of children and ways of addressing bullying, particularly in schools. We are now joined via Zoom by Dr. Joan van Niekerk, who is a consultant, child protection and child rights. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your viewers as well.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about bullying. I mean, we saw this terrible incident there where a young boy has in fact lost part of his finger due to bullying. And I want to talk to what the rights of not only the child is, but also those of the parents. When something like that happens on school premises, I would think that as a parent, I've left my child to your care. I don't expect that my child will come back like this. Can we talk to this?
Yes, we can, and we should. I believe every school should have an anti-bullying policy, that children themselves have contributed to the development of this. I think that it is important that learners and parents, the school governing body, and educators sit together and develop the kind of anti-bullying policy that really does protect children in the school environment. But that's not enough. You can have an anti-bullying policy, but unless there are clear outcomes in terms of when someone is bullied, like this child, and those outcomes are actually implemented. It shouldn't just be what we call a paper tiger, something that has got very little value in the real situation. The other thing is children should be educated on it. It's not enough to write a policy and leave it. There should be some kind of reminders to children that they must abide by that policy. Of course, one of the things that is problematic is that we tend to think of bullying as just being physical or sexual bullying. We have to also look at the fact that many children are verbally or emotionally bullied at school. We also sometimes forget the fact that children take adults as their example. And when we're looking at the prevention of violence in schools, we need to really start with the prevention of violence in the home. We should be making sure that our caregivers know how to raise children without violence and without exposure to violence. Because what a child experiences in the home environment is often taken into the school environment. So this becomes very important.
Well, Dr. Joan, I think you anticipated the next couple of questions I had, but in any case, what I did want to talk to, as you say, you know, we need to also just define what bullying is, and what I wanted to say was that, you know, bullying can't just be limited to, you know, physical violence or verbal abuse, but you also brought in a very interesting one, which is sexual abuse, and interestingly, that's also taking place on school premises. I want to talk about, you know, what bullying is and how we define it, because I think once we define it, then we're able to talk to children about what is bullying and what is not actually permitted.
It should be inclusive of as many forms of violence as possible. Verbal violence, emotional violence, teasing, labeling, insulting, theft of a child's lunch, theft of a child's lunch money. All of these things are included in our definition of violence. Of course, one of the issues we need to think about is how do we teach children social and emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is incredibly important, because if a child does not have emotional intelligence, they're unable to empathize or understand how their behavior influences another child, another educator, or someone else within their world. I do believe that we underutilize life skills education. I also think we underutilize other aspects of the school curriculum as well. Storytelling, reading to children, getting children to read for themselves, language studies. These are all opportunities for saying to children, this is what violence is about. How do you think a child might feel if they were in this situation in which they were insulted, or there was a WhatsApp group which labeled them in a very negative way? These are the issues that we need to educate children on. But we also need to look at the fact that this begins in the home, and educators, learners in leadership positions like school monitors, school prefects, parents and caregivers are the models for children when it comes to learning this kind of understanding, appreciation, emotional intelligence, and also the kind of skills that enable children to deal with differences of opinion, differences in terms of ideas, culture, without resorting to any form of violence, verbal, teasing, labeling, etc.
Doctor, I want to bring it back to the home then. Many children, in fact, don't speak about, such incidences, or they're afraid. How can parents identify when their children are being bullied at school? But I also want to actually look at it the other way. How are parents to identify that, their child is actually the aggressor, is actually the bully? Because I think it would be better to work both ways, where, parents address it in both scenarios. Yes, it's easy for a parent whose child is being bullied to confront the school, but it's also important for those whose children are actually bullies to be honest about it.
Absolutely. And this is a very difficult thing for a parent to accept. But on the other hand, the parent needs to look at messaging to their child. How many children, if they come home and report that they were hit at school, hear from maybe a parent, particularly if they're a boy, well, go back and hit him as hard as you can tomorrow. Yeah. If he punched you on the nose, you just punch him back. And these messages kind of contribute to the circularity of bullying, to encouraging violence in response to violence. And I think that this is an important thing to look at. I think if someone comes back to one as a parent and says, your child is the aggressor in this instance, one needs to look at it very carefully and give one's child space to acknowledge that behavior. I have heard a lot of parents say, my child would never do that. Yeah. My child knows better. Instead of saying to their child, what happened here? Tell me more about what happened. And encouraging the child to acknowledge when their behavior has been aggressive, angry, inappropriate, and so on. Sometimes children are so scared to acknowledge bad behavior to a parent because they are scared maybe of being hit or having some violence in return, that they cannot tell the truth. Yeah. So bullies need attention and they need careful, sensitive management.
Yeah. Dr. Joan, a pleasure talking to you, and thanks so very much for weighing in on this very important issue. We appreciate your time, ma'am.
Thank you for having me, and please, we appeal to our schools to make sure that they really do address this very directly.
All right, thank you. Dr. Joan van Niekerk, consultant on child protection and child rights, as we observe Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week.